In our world today, the Maya hold a particular fascination. That's because we're curious about our future, so we can't help but be captivated by a civilization that claimed to have a grasp on the future. Now, the ancient civilization of the Maya stretched for 4,000 years, from around 2500 BC to AD 1500. Think about that for a moment. That's twice the time that's passed since Jesus of Nazareth was on earth. The Maya settled a number of kingdoms in Central America, countries we now know as Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras and Belize. These Maya seem a bit of an enigma to our modern minds. For example, they built amazing pyramids, temples and cities, but never got beyond using stone implements. They never used iron or bronze. They invented the concept of zero in maths, but never invented the wheel. They had a highly sophisticated culture and an advanced civilization, yet they also practiced human sacrifice. But despite these surprising contradictions, the ancient Maya were an amazing civilization. They built huge cities and enormous pyramids that reached into the sky. They invented a written hieroglyphic script. Now, this alone was a phenomenal achievement when you consider that in all of human history, writing has only been properly invented twice. The Mesopotamians in modern-day Iraq, and the Mesoamericans, the Maya and their predecessors. There can also be no question that they were truly expert astronomers. In fact, they were obsessed with astronomy and time. They built entire cities that worked as astronomical observatories to track the positions of the sun, the moon, the planets and the stars. They calculated the exact duration of a year to 1,000th of a decimal point. They also paid great attention to one of the world's most astounding natural phenomena, the eclipses of the sun and moon. They were able to predict every solar and lunar eclipse right up to today. They recorded these events and other astronomical phenomena in paper books made out of a type of bark. These ancient books are now called codices. When the Spanish invaded the Americas, they deliberately destroyed all the Mayan books they could find, and only 3 codices are known to have survived to this day. Now, the Dresden Codex is considered the most complete of the 3, and it comes from this former great Mayan city of Chichen Itza, located in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The Codex was written by 8 different scribes who wrote on both sides of the page and totaled 74 pages in length. Its images were carefully painted in red, black and blue. This codex contains some chilling information. You see, the Maya had an extremely complicated method of keeping track of time, based on 3 separate calendars. The most important and accurate of these is the long count calendar. And on the 21st of December 2012, the long count calendar ends. For many, this has ominous implications. According to this calendar, time will be up for the universe. It will literally be the end of days. And that's why some are calling it the countdown to Armageddon. Well, here we are on the doorstep. So the suspense is only mounting. And people see various astronomical alignments happening at the end of 2012. So they conclude, yes, it looks like something momentous will take place. It could be the Earth colliding with a passing planet. It could be solar flashes consuming this world. Well, plenty of scholars and scientists say this is all rubbish, of course. We're just making some cosmic drama out of obscure Mayan calendar symbols. They say the end of 2012 will just usher in another year. The Maya were so desperate to know the future, they even sacrificed people to secure it. Today, people are still deeply interested to know what the future holds for them. It seems like such a basic human need. To discover what the future holds is our effort to gain an edge over fate. But is it possible to know the future at all? And if so, how? Are these impressive Mayan pyramids and observatories rising out of the jungle able to speak to us? Are those calendars carved in stone able to make predictions? Is that possible? Does the ancient Mayan calendar actually hold some secret clue to our future? The problem is this: a track record. Mayan prophecy doesn't have a track record. We can't look back in history and see whether other Mayan predictions came true or not. We can't really tell if they had a grasp of the future because there's no sign they ever did so in the past. But what if you could find a string of prophecies that do have a track record? Now, wouldn't that really be something? What if you could examine over 1,000 predictions that in fact go back through the centuries of history? Does such a thing exist? Well, today we're going to discover something extraordinary by comparing two ancient civilizations, two sets of pyramids. This is the most visited place on earth, the Egyptian pyramids at Giza, the only one of the ancient seven wonders of the world that still exists today. Now imagine this: these three pyramids, built 4,500 years ago, are still today the largest man-made structures on earth. No skyscraper on planet Earth is more massive. And this is the largest of the three, the Pyramid of Cheops, often called the Great Pyramid. It weighs over 5 million tons, is over 130 meters high, that's a whopping 48 stories, and covers the equivalent of 10 football fields. Now maybe you've pondered selecting a grave site or a gravestone for a loved one. I'd imagine it'd be a bit smaller than this, right? Not so many tons. Well, this structure enshrines the burial chamber of Pharaoh Cheops. Talk about larger than life. That's what the pharaohs were. That's what Egypt was as an empire. It still fills us with awe today. The Egyptian empires lasted thousands of years. They stretched through a very long part of history. Now, what if a string of prophecy tried to take on Egypt? What if there were predictions about what would happen hundreds or even thousands of years down the road? It's pretty hard to imagine. Most of us can't even predict what the economy will be like next month, who'll be elected next year. Well, I'm going to show you something incredible right now. I'm going to show you that one book has a track record of prediction that you can check, examine and verify through thousands of years of history. Yes, I know. It's hard to believe, isn't it? That's like saying that one book could actually move one of these three massive pyramids. Let's face it, it's not going to happen. But let's go on a little trip down the Nile and I'll show you what I mean. Today you can still sail down the Nile in a felucca. These boats are handmade in much the same way back when those mighty figures in stone over there were pharaohs in real life. The Nile created Egypt, that civilization grew out of a swathe of green, this overflowing river cut in a very dry desert. Everything that happened in ancient Egypt happened within a few kilometers of this water. Everything else was just sand dunes. And what happened here was all about the pharaohs. They were worshipped as god kings. Those huge pyramids back at Giza and the great temples at Karnak, Luxor and Abu Simbel told people that if they wanted a ticket to heaven, it would have to go through Pharaoh, their protector in this life and the next. So traveling the Nile is about waving at the pharaohs. Here you can wave at Tutankhamun, here at Ramesses II, here at Nefertiti. And this is where they stood tallest. Here we see their power and wealth in the Valley of the Kings. 49 pharaohs are buried here, every one of them monumental, powerful figures. Egypt could boast the longest line of kings of any nation on earth. Egyptian princes stood at the top of the then known world for over 3,000 years. Imagine a lone Bible prophet looking at these larger-than-life figures. His name was Ezekiel. Yes, that's one of the books of the Bible. And Ezekiel lived during the time of Ramesses II and Thutmose III. Egypt was a mighty power, of course. It was the superpower of its day. The nation of Israel, just a little colony of sorts. Now Ezekiel received a message from God about the future, and so he wrote it down. He recorded it. He made a series of incredible predictions about Egypt. This is what he said in one of them. It's recorded in Ezekiel chapter 30 and verse 13. There shall no longer be princes from the land of Egypt. The Egyptian princes, who stood over the Hebrews and the world like giants over a mouse, were going to simply go away? Now I'm sure these figures you see carved in stone would have simply laughed this little prediction off. Ezekiel's prediction gives a whole new meaning to waving at the pharaohs. He could wave goodbye. Somehow this Bible prophet plugged into a kind of divine omniscience, a divine foreknowledge that can see hundreds of years into the future. No one in their right mind, back when those monuments were built along the banks of the Nile at Karnak, Luxor, Philae and Abu Simbel, would have predicted that the pharaohs would simply stop, like a felucca running into a big rock. But that's exactly what happened. Okay, but that's just one prediction. Maybe Ezekiel just got lucky. Does Bible prophecy actually have a track record? Well, to examine the next prophecy about Egypt, we need to get off the boat and get on the banks of the Nile. It's quiet and peaceful here by the Nile, one of the most life-giving bodies of water in the world. You see various types of vegetation growing along the banks of the Nile. Plenty of grain, plenty of vegetables. However, something is missing here. Something very big is missing here. And if you sail up and down the whole length of the Nile in Egypt, you'll discover it's missing everywhere. You know what it is? The papyrus reed. At one point, the papyrus reed grew in such abundance here that it became the symbol of Lower Egypt. You'll even see it carved into stone columns in the temple of Karnak. The lotus plant symbolized Upper Egypt, the papyrus plant, Lower Egypt. And it was an extremely useful plant, unlike the weeds we see growing along the river today. The ancient Egyptians were the first people to make paper, and they made it from the papyrus reed. We get our word paper from papyrus. Much of the wealth of the pharaohs came from exporting the paper created out of millions of those papyrus reeds growing in the mud banks of the Nile River. So what happened? Well, no one is quite sure what happened, but the river, the creeks and the brooks of Egypt today are totally free of the paper reed, the papyrus reed. Now, let's get back to Bible prophecy and its track record of predicting history. Another Bible prophet, named Isaiah, made an amazing prediction about Egypt too. Now, he's perhaps the most eloquent of all the Old Testament Bible prophets. This man felt God was showing him the future, and this is what he wrote down. Again, you can see it in black and white in the Bible in Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 7. The papyrus reeds by the river will wither, be driven away, and be no more. I can tell you this, to start getting a feeling of the track record of Bible prophecy, just look from this verse down to the banks of the Nile and back again. Pretty remarkable. How could this man living way back then have possibly known that the most recognized plant in all of Egypt would simply disappear and never return? The papyrus reeds will be no more. Looking hundreds of years into the future. Hard to imagine. But let me present one more example to really show you there is a track record about Bible prophecy and Egypt. The step pyramid at Saqqara is one of the oldest stone structures in the world and ushered in the age of pyramid building. It was built for King Zoser, one of the greatest Egyptian pharaohs. This pyramid was his tomb, designed and built by his famous architect Imhotep. Saqqara is one of the most extensive archaeological sites in all of Egypt. It was the cemetery of Memphis, the grand capital of ancient Egypt. Imagine, what kind of city would have a cemetery like this? Well, Memphis was the most fabulous city on earth. Back in the day when those enormous pyramids at Giza were built, Memphis was the religious and political capital of Egypt. It was the great center of trade, commerce and religion. This dazzling city was the capital of the empire for thousands of years. Memphis became one of the most spectacular cities in the ancient world, filled with gleaming stone temples and palaces. Its streets were lined with statues and idols. You'd also find a colossal idol of Ramesses II, along with idols to the many other gods that the Egyptians worshipped. And here we are. Look at it today. Not much to see, is there? It's barren and all the idols are broken. Was this really the site of the grand and glorious Memphis? Well, they've actually dug up quite a few broken pieces of those massive statues and idols. We know that the ear alone of the huge Ramesses II statue measured 50 centimeters. And here we see the remains of an alabaster sphinx, now broken and corroded. Well, once again, I'm going to take you to a Bible prophet and to something he said about this place. Another remarkable prophecy. It's Ezekiel again, still in touch with his Lord, still getting messages. Here it is in Ezekiel chapter 30 and verse 13. This is what the Sovereign Lord says. I will destroy the idols and put an end to the images of Memphis. Try to imagine one of the grandest cities in the ancient world spread out here. Even in the Middle Ages, it extended half a day's journey in every direction. And today, Yes, the idols are destroyed. All those images have come to an end. All you see are ruins and rubbish. It sure looks like God did exactly what He told Ezekiel He was going to do. Still hard to believe? Yes, there are legitimate doubts. For example, you could say, well, yes, many ancient cities have been destroyed. There are lots of places that are just rubble today. Granted. But let me show you one more thing related to this prophecy. Here's what you discover if you travel around Egypt today. Go to the sites of other large cities no longer standing. If you explore a little, you'll find that their statues and idols remain intact and are being excavated. Memphis is quite unique. That's where everything is broken. That's where you only dig up bits and pieces. The words of Ezekiel are like a script that history has followed to the letter. I will put an end to the images of Memphis. Cities rise and fall. Empires come and go. The grandest of pharaohs fades into the dark. But when you look carefully at the track record of Bible prophecy, you begin to see something else. It suggests there is someone standing above the flow of history, that someone has a bigger picture, that there is a higher power who is in control. He doesn't just dip his toe into the Nile, see what's happening in the present. He sees where the Nile begins and where it's going to end. He sees the big picture. Just consider these amazing predictions. The princes of Egypt are just going to stop. The papyrus reed is going to inexplicably disappear. The idols of Memphis will be smashed into pieces. And Egypt will no longer rule over the nations. That's quite a track record. Could it just be that while we've been searching for the doorway to the future in exotic lands and ancient civilizations, the answer has been in front of us the whole time? You see, there are over 1,000 predictions or prophecies in the Bible, over 1,000 made by the Bible prophets. And the amazing thing is, they were right every time, never a miss. Now that's quite a track record, isn't it? You see, the God of the Bible takes this matter of predicting the future very, very seriously. He leaves no room for mistakes. In fact, He points to His ability to foretell the future as a proof that He is the true God. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from the ancient times, the things that are not yet done. Every Bible prophecy is an open invitation for people to prove Him wrong if they can, but no one ever has. Yes, I know the idea of the God of the Bible, seeing details thousands of years ahead of time, may be hard to get your head around. But I challenge you to open the Bible and read it for yourself. Check it out. You'll discover something amazing. By all means, keep your skeptical hat on. That's okay. You don't have to dismiss your doubts right away. Just keep an open mind. Just look carefully with me at the Bible's track record. I believe you can take in a perspective that'll open your eyes wider than you've believed possible. Please join me as we pray. Father in heaven, it's hard for a lot of us to really take in the idea of Bible prophecy, of peering into the future with such accuracy. But I believe you can handle our doubts. You can help us grow. I'd like to ask that you enable us to grasp the bigger picture. Help us to open up to a wider perspective. Show us how our individual lives might benefit from this divine hold on the future. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. If you've been inspired by this week's program, be sure to join us again next week, when It Is Written will present another new and thought-provoking perspective on the peace, insight, understanding and hope that only the Bible can give us. It Is Written truly is television that changes lives. Until next week, remember, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God.